Welcome to another session of HTML, and this is HTML 106. In this class, we're going to be looking at forms. So let me go through the video and show you what it is. I guess we didn't have any questions as regard forms. So let me show you all the deliverables that forms has to offer, because we have this class is divided into two, which is form for part one and form part two. The first part one is strictly majorly on input. Input is one of the most complex form element you meet on the planet Earth. It has so many, attributes or style that gives you various things. So once you master it, you'll be able to collect wide range of input from your user. Okay, so these are the whole thing, and I assume that you guys have gone through the video because this is the major video, and today's class is just for us to review what we've done and highlight a kind of a revision. And this is also good if you have example, or rather if you have questions. So I'll be taking this one after the other until we get to the end. I'll just pick those things that I feel like are very unique and special that I need to pay more attention to, or you need to pay more attention to. So let's go, guys, and let me take you to our. Let me change the screen now to the code section. Okay, so let's split this into two. I will change the title of what we have here to our form. Form part one. And this one is I will maintain the black. I will remove the background. I'll maintain the black and maintain the color so that it won't be too bright on what we are looking at. So I'm gonna remove all the table because we ain't talking about table today. Even though, yeah, we can use table to structure our form, that's the thing. You could actually use table to structure your form. Table is not just for tabular information alone. It sometimes can be used to give your site structure. However, we strongly, recommend that you use other method, which you will see during the course of what we are doing. Definitely not anytime soon. By the time we get to CSS, you will see other method in which you can display your form. Okay, so what are forms? Forms are ways to receive input from the user. Forms are a way to receive input from the user. I can ask you now, what are the type of forms that we have? You can think about it and say, oh, application form, leave form, registration form, sign off form. You have them a lot, and you could begin to think about developing an interface that will require a form. So based on that, you will then look at type of forms that we have. The today's class is majorly on input form. Input. So I told you this input is one of the most complex elements, or one of the most sophisticated elements in the entire HTML arsenal. So, and knowing it is very interesting, and it's very simple. Even though it's complex, it is very simple to remember and memorize. So before we start doing anything about forms, there is one major thing that you need to put in mind, and that's the fact that every input will be inside a form element. Every input will be inside a form element. It's kind of a requirement. And yeah, it's kind of a requirement, even though it doesn't give you any error if you do not do that, but it's a kind of requirement. Just like if you want to do table, for example, you will have to first put table before you do tr, then before you do td. So in this case, if you want to put an input element, you need to start with a form. So the form is a kind of a definition to say, okay, this is a form declaration and these are the inputs that you can have into it. Inputs are a way for you to accept information from the user. Okay, we have various types of inputs, and that's where the complexity starts from. So let's go ahead. And the form declaration is as simple as this. Just say form, and then you end your tag form. It's that simple. Let's look at how we can do our input. So you start with input and then you end your tag. Input is one of those elements that also have that doesn't have a close tag. It doesn't have a unique tag for closing. You will need to do self-closing tag for input. So I'll repeat that again. Input is one of those tag, one of those 1% or 2% of those tag that doesn't have special close tag or that does not have a pair of close tag. Remember, we have open tag and close tag. So input does not have dedicated close tag. So it doesn't is because it doesn't have a content. That's why. So any element that doesn't have a content, we automatically need to close it this way. Remember other ones, guys. We have the break and we have the HR. We also have the IMG, that's the image. I guess from the top of my head, these are all the tags that does not have a set of pair of tags, right? So let's move on. So knowing that our tag is supposed to be this way, now let's have a visual representation of what this translates into. Let's see the visual translation of this. So if I do a preview, so this gives us what you have as a result. This translates to this. And by default, you can actually use it. It's quite usable. You know, you can start filling the form. So what that means is that you can have as many input as you want, and then you are getting somewhere. You know, you are getting somewhere already. So these are like input text for you to start capturing information. But there's quite a lot of things missing. Apart from the fact that you don't have an identifier, it's called a label. You don't have like a label to denote, oh, this is what this form is supposed to do. That's one thing that is missing. So let's go ahead and see how you can do all those things. So let me return back to where I was and go to the beginning. Okay, so as an input, there are attributes that you need to pay attention to, and that attribute is called type, because we have like, I think, more than 20 different types of input elements. From the top of my head, something with a range of 20 or 18, right? And we'll be focused on few of them. We can't go through all of them. We already have a video that, you know, went through each one of these, so you can reference back to that video. Okay, so we're going to focus on the default, and the default is text, you know, meaning you want to capture textual information about, you know, this form itself. I'm just want to do something in our styling here. You can ignore this, and this is just to make sure that our input is kind of big. So you can ignore what I'm writing here. Okay, so let's move on. Let me also increase the font size so that we can have something sizable to deal with by the time we're filling it. So this is just so that you will have a visual representation of what is going on. Now, what I've introduced so far is just to have the input and this. And I mentioned that having your text this way is nice, but you need to also have a kind of way to denote that this is the label that is controlling this text. So ideally, the way to do that is, let's say we want to provide email address. So the way to do that ideally is to do something like this, to just have a floating, you know, text, you know, just hanging around, which is not too bad. Let's also increase the font of the general site, everything on the site. Let's increase the font of everything on the site so that we can have it display in a big format. Okay, so what you have in this case is that you have the label, which is the email. This email is the label, but the label is not really doing anything, so to say. We need to, there's an advanced feature that you can do to make sure that when you click on this email, it triggers this input, and that is called label element. So there's actually a label element that you can attach to here that will make this more like intuitive and responsive, to your click. So that is taking us to another element now, and that element is called label. So I'm going to put that element and wrap it inside everything here. So I'm wrapping that element inside email and also inside our input element. So just look at the orderliness of the whole thing. So I'm going to start by saying my label is here, and I'm wrapping everything inside label. So doing so doesn't have a visual information. It doesn't really give you any visual display in the result. But what it does is that whenever you click on your email, what happens to the text box is that it gets focus. So let me do that again. If I click here, what happened here is that it gets focus. That's the benefit of having a label. Okay, moving on. So not just that we have a text alone, like I said, we have various type of input. So which we are going to experiment. So let's go ahead and experiment other ones that we have. We actually have number, and what number does, you can guess, is that it allows you to just put only numbers. So if you try to put any other things, it won't allow you. We also have email, and even though it allows you to put anything that is not email, but upon submission, it will enforce you to provide a valid email. We also have a password, and what this does, you can guess it. It hides the information that you have there, and make sure that it's hidden from praying eyes. You also have some weird type, which is color. You have color. Let me create a padding top for this. Left top. Okay, so let's continue, guys. I wanted to create this to give me that space. So we have color, and what color does, you could guess it, allows you to pick color. We also have date, it allows you to pick date. You also have date time, I guess, date time local, which allows you to pick, date and time together. And you also have time specifically, and that will default to time, which allows you to just pick only time. So you can check all the ones available. So if I try to use the browser, or rather use the IDE to check all the type I have, I think it should give me a kind of a lookup. So let's look up all the ones we have. So we have text, we have it's not looking up the information. I have too much extension installed, so it's not looking up the information. It tried to come up, but it went out again. So that's what happens when you have too much extensions installed. But we have quite a lot of them. Okay, moving on to the next thing is, what are the attributes supported by input elements? Because it's not just the type that we are particular about. You can also be specific to say, oh, we have something very interesting which is called placeholder. Placeholder is a text that should be in the text box if nothing is in the text box. So it's like it's staying, taking a place. So let's look at how we can use it. So if I say, for example, a placeholder is enter your email. So if I do something like this, enter your email, you can see the result that we have there. It says enter your email. That's the benefit of what a placeholder does. Immediately you start typing something, that your placeholder goes away. When you come back to put the information, your placeholder, when you take away the information there, your placeholder comes back to the default. Okay, so those are pretty straightforward. Let's move on to something a little bit more sophisticated. I will leave this part here so that we can look at the next part, and that one is called label, or rather checkboxes. So checkboxes, they are options that allow you to pick multiple options from multiple selection from various options. So example can be if I say choose colors, choose your favorite colors. So I'll just go in with text now. I want to just write text. Choose your favorite colors, right? So that can be anything. I have it there. So I can now have a checkbox that says red. I'm not putting the checkbox yet. I just want to give you an option on why it is red, green, and I say blue. So this is supposed to allow somebody to be able to, select as many colors as you want or many options as you want. Let's say indigo. Okay, so how do you create a checkbox? A checkbox can be created by using input. So I will start from the first thing, which is input. So if you do input like this, you remember what input does by default. Input by default comes up with the input with a text by default like this, right? So, but you need to specify that, hey, the input I want is a checkbox, not just a text box like this. So how do you specify that? Is by saying type. The type of the input, you now specify that it's a checkbox. Immediately you do that, you can see there's a small dot there before the red, and that indicates for red there. So remember that we have label that allows you to group inputs together. Label allows you to group texts or to group your input that you want to receive from the user. So this is a form of input. So you can group these two guys together by using label. So let's go ahead and group these guys inside label. So I'll create a label and I'll put these two guys inside the label. So I have it this way. So someone will ask me, why do you need to group it like this? You should group it like this because if you click on the red, it will toggle the checkbox for this. If you do not group it like this, you will need to check the input element before the checkbox will be activated. So let's give it a try. So if I click here now, you can see that my checkbox is being toggled. If I click on red, my checkbox is being toggled. Let's try that for green. So if I come here and duplicate, just what I have for red, I'm not going to put the label in the green. So let's try and click on green. So if you click on green, you can see that it's not giving you that check effect. It's not checking until you click on the checkbox beside green before that checks happen. So you can see the benefit of label. Label allows you to group your input with your text together. So let's go ahead and do the needful for green. And I will do the same for yellow, rather for blue. And I will do for indigo. So you can then play around with your results. So I will just let this one be like this, red. So if you now check on each of the checkboxes, you can see that you can make your option. And this is how to use your checkbox. The opposite of checkbox is called radio box. Radio box allow you to select one option from group of options. Checkbox, radio box allow you to select one option from group of options. So how can you demonstrate that? I'm going to repeat the same thing here that I've done. I'm going to repeat it. So I'm copying what I have there, and I will do a demarcation. In this case, I will say select one. Select one option. So that you can see that it's still saying that it's still showing checkboxes. But how do you change it to a radio box? Is by changing the type from checkbox to radio. So me changing this to radio allows me to have this effect. But we are not done yet. The next thing you need to do is, even though you've changed it to a radio box, you need to group all these radio boxes into a single name. They need to have a single name. And the reason why they need to have a single name is so that the system will know all the radio boxes that should work together. Because you say radio boxes is that you should select one out of group of radio boxes. You need to be able to allocate a name to it so that you know that, oh, okay, these 4 radio boxes are supposed to be grouped separately. So how do you put a name to it? You go to each and every radio box that you want to group the same way and add a name attribute and give it a specific name. So in this case, I'll just say color. So that's the name I'm giving it. So that way I can then select any one I want. If you choose another one, it will remove the selected checkbox or selected option from what you have and give you a default value. So that's what we have for radio box. And finally, we have our submit button. Submit button, which is kind of weird because why will a button be an input element? Yes, submit button is an input element. It's surprising to me too, but that's what it is. We'll use it like that. Okay, so you can say that normally it's supposed to be like this. Submit. If you ask me, I will say we should just be able to do submit like this, and everybody goes, everybody go and enjoy themselves. But this is not what it's supposed to be, or this is not what it is. This is not the case. So it is like this. You still use input. So that's why I said input is very complex, guys. Like, it's very robust. Maybe that's the right word to use. It's very robust. It does a lot of things because it accepts information from user. So I can use the keyword, or rather the word input, and the type. So guess what the type will be now? Instead of radio, instead of checkbox, instead of text, now it will be submit. Yep, it will be submit. So you can actually receive an input from user to submit this form. So that's how it works, guys. So you can also specify the value of what it should show to the user by saying send. This can be anything you want to type here. Send my info. Okay, guys, I think that's what Form 1 is all about. And I think I gave an assignment. Maybe it's in the part 2 that there was an assignment. So I guess there's an assignment in the part 2. So you guys should gear up for an assignment. And that assignment is to create a form, real life form. In the video, we did a real life form. So in the next class, you're also going to do a form. So the class is open for questions. Send in your questions, please. Question. Your question.
Those dogs that will tick on the red, the green, and the blue. Can we change it to? Okay, can we change it to like kind of a box to tick?
Okay.
Like to tick it like mark.
That's what is here now. That's tick here now. That's it here.
Like a good sign, a mark.
Okay, let me show you. That's what is there. But okay, and it's because it's very small. It's because so let me change the font to be very big so that you understand, you will see it very well. It's customizing, it's not part of the lectures. It's just to show you the styling. We've not gotten to this part yet. By the time we get to that part, I will explain what it is I'm doing. So I'm just changing the shape and the size of what we have there. Let me see if this will apply to it. Okay, this is not giving it what I want it to get. I think I can use zoom. To increase that. I want to zoom it out because it's so small. the size. So this is just custom so that you can see the checkbox, because we were saying that you couldn't see the checkboxes. So is it, can you see it now? So that's the checkbox. The reason why, yeah, it's because I'm using, um, I have to zoom it. So, so now it should be obvious now. Maybe I will be using this one self instead of using this method. Hmm. So if I want to implement for radio, more questions. Let me have more questions, please. So if you do something like this, so you can see it clearly now. So like I said, this part, we are getting to this one later. This is CSS. We are still in HTML. So by the time we finish HTML, the next part will be CSS. So we talk more about how I made all these things happen. But in the meantime, we are focusing on HTML, and that's more like the skeleton of the whole system. So this is like makeup, making up what it is that you've designed. So all these ones are the major parts for now. This is what you should be focusing on, how to understand all these things.